take a look at one of the big major visual changes inside of Photoshop CS6, and that's the dark interface. All right, so you could see here, I mean, it hits you as soon as you open it. This is a different Photoshop. It's a very different Photoshop. It's a dark Photoshop. Now, probably 80-90% of the people are going to love it. There's going to be 10 to 20% of the people, that probably more like 10%ish, that just don't want it. They want the old interface. But it's the way software design is going. It's the way software development's going. If you look at all the current software, it has a dark interface. Our photos and our images simply look better on a dark interface as well. So if you look at your phones and your iPads and all these things, they all have black behind them. They all have black around the screen, and that's because everything looks better against black. Okay? So let's take a look at a way you can change this if you really don't like it. You can come up here to the Photoshop menu. You can go down to your preferences, come over here to interface, and you can see it gives you, there's 4 different colors to choose from. All right, there's the really dark version. I'm going to move this over a little bit. There's the really dark version. There's a semi-dark version. There's kind of the not so dark version, and then there's back to the kind of looks like the default version, the way it used to be. Okay, so you can change between any one of these here. All right. So I kind of like the dark version, or I kind of like the second one from the left here. So I'm going to leave it on that one. We'll click OK. All right, a couple other interface things that we have here. I've got a layer selected over here. One of the things you'll notice, I'm going to press Command or Control T for free transform. One of the things that you'll notice is that you get a lot of on-screen controls here. Okay, so as I move this, you're going to see that it tells us right here the width and the height, how it's moving. If I move my cursor outside, it's going to give me the angle at which I'm moving something here. Okay? And you're going to see that in a lot of different places in Photoshop. Whatever you're doing on screen, see, I'm just using the move tool, and it's telling me how far I'm moving it up, down, sideways, left, right, diagonal, whatever it happens to be. But you're going to see as you go through the whole interface here, you're going to see a lot of those little kind of heads-up displays pop up around Photoshop. Now, another thing that's kind of new is, if you recall, so here's the adjustments panel, and this was added a while back in an earlier version of Photoshop. So the adjustments panel is still there. But what would happen is if I clicked on an adjustment layer, it would open up in the adjustments panel, and I'd see all the settings for that. Now what Photoshop has done is they've given us this properties panel. And this properties panel now holds all of the, I guess you can call it properties, for whatever layer you happen to be on. So it changes. It's kind of context sensitive based on what you happen to be doing at the time. So all of your adjustments are going to pop up over here. So I want to make changes. That's my hue saturation adjustment. So I click on that. If I click on my type tool, and let's just kind of go over, open up our properties panel. Here, perfect example, click on the layer mask. That's another change. Remember, there used to be a masks panel. All right, so there was an adjustments panel, and that had all the adjustments, and there was a masks panel, and that had all of masking related type of things we could do, like the density and the feather and the mask edge and all that. So now that's all lumped back into the properties panel. Okay, so now anything that you do inside of here is going to be in the properties panel. Whether you're clicking on an adjustment layer, it'll show you those settings, or when you click on a layer mask, it'll show you those settings. If you have Photoshop extended and you're using 3D, it'll show you the 3D settings for that layer. So there's a lot of different uses of this properties panel, and it's going to change on the interface based on whatever you happen to be clicking on over here inside the layers palette. Another one, if you look down here, there's Mini Bridge. So Mini Bridge is now located, it's in its own little window at the bottom here. It's kind of like a little film strip. So Mini Bridge is still here, but instead of floating around in different places all around the interface here, it's in its own little kind of docked area down here at the bottom, which kind of makes sense. If you use Lightroom, it's kind of a lot like Lightroom, because Lightroom has that little film strip at the bottom, which is where you can see your photos. Okay, so obviously the big one, the interface color. And don't forget, if you don't like it, just come up here to the Photoshop menu under Preferences, go to Interface. If you're on a PC, you can go under the Edit menu to your preferences, and you can, of course, change those colors, or you can make it darker if you'd like.